She couldn't see the light in my eyes. Her pain was hidden in her silent cries. She thought she walked this world alone, leaving her mother.
The room is quiet, except for my tears. My hands tremble, holding her letter. Each word hurts my heart. Tears falling from my eyes. Her final words pierce me deeply. It reads,
Dear Mom, by the time you read this letter, I'll be gone. I know these words will hurt you, but they are my truth. My last confession. All my life I've been longing for your love, your approval, but I could never reach it. I felt like a burden, like I would never be good enough. And I didn't know why. You were so busy, so caught up in your own life, that you didn't see me. You didn't see the little girl who needed her mom, who needed to hear she was enough. I tried so hard to be perfect, to be everything you wanted, but it was never enough. I was never enough.
The letter slipped from my hands, falling to the floor. My cries grew louder, filling the empty house. I had failed her. I had failed my daughter in the worst way, and now it was too late to fix it. I looked around her room, filled with pieces of a life that ended too soon. The posters on the walls, the books on the shelves, the stuffed animals on the bed all stood there quietly, witnesses to the pain she had gone through. I picked up the letter again, forcing myself to keep reading.
As I grew older, the distance between us only widened. I watched as you pour your love into your work, your friends, but never into me. I felt invisible, like a ghost in my own home. I wanted to scream, to make you see me, but I was too afraid. Afraid that you would confirm my worst fear, that you didn't love me. Was I really a curse? Maybe you think I brought bad luck into your life because things fell apart after I was born, but how could that be my fault? That worked out when I was 5, and though you stayed, you disappeared emotionally. Your absence left scars. Mom, you've given me no choice. You were supposed to protect me, to love me, to guide me, but instead, you made me feel I was never enough. I needed you, Mom. I needed you to see me, to understand me, but every time I reached out, you pushed me away. You were always too busy, too tired, too angry. And I thought it was my fault. I thought if I was just a little better, you'd finally see me. But you never did.
I can barely see through the tears that won't stop falling. My daughter's final words are like knives, cutting deeper with each sentence. The words hurt me deeply. I thought I was doing my best as a mom, but I missed the most important things, which included her feelings. The paper shakes in my hands, and I can't stop the flood of guilt that watches over me. Memories of times I dismissed her, times I yelled instead of listening, flashed before my eyes. I never realized how much she was hurting. I never knew how much damage I was doing. She felt pain, loneliness, and needed my love, but now it's too late. I dropped to my knees, holding the letter tight, and cried uncontrollably. I lost my daughter. I lost my chance to make things right. All I have left are these words, her last words, and the pain of regret. What a world. The memories of her father leaving us could not be erased, and now she left too.
Whenever I cried, you said, be stronger. When I needed a hug, you said, don't be sensitive. I listened. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I didn't deserve your love or attention.
At this moment, I felt my knees, the weight of her lips crushing me. How could I have been so blind? I thought I was teaching her to be strong, but instead I was breaking her down. I was the reason she felt so alone.
You made me feel like a burden, like I didn't matter. And now, as I take my last breath, all I can think about is how much I regret having you as a mother.
I cry hard, my body shakes. I want to scream, tear the letter, but I can't. This is all I have left of her. These words are her last message.
I loved you, Mom. I really did. But I needed you to love me back. But you never did.
Words repeat in my head. I can't breathe. I lost her, not just because she's gone, but because I wasn't there for her before. I failed to be the mom she needed. Now it's too late. I can't move. My knees press into the cold floor as the letter slipped from my fingers. My mind races, pulling me back through the years, through every moment I felt Sarah. Her name felt bitter, a harsh reminder of what I didn't do. I remember the day Sarah came into this world. She was so small, wrapped tightly in a pink blanket, her tiny fingers curled around mine, and for a moment I thought I could be the mother she needed, but that moment faded quickly. I had work, bills, and my own problems to deal with. Sarah became another responsibility in a long list of things that overwhelmed me. She took her first steps when she was 1. I should have been happy, but instead I didn't notice. I was late for a meeting. Her father wasn't around, and I was deeply stressed. Sarah toddled toward me. "Mommy, look." With a big smile, she said, her voice so innocent, but I said, "That is nice, Sarah," without even looking up from my phone. Her 10th birthday was supposed to be special. I had promised her a party. She invited her friends, and I could see how excited she was, but I was running late as usual. By the time I got home, the house was quiet. Her handmade decorations sank from the ceiling. I found her in her room, sitting alone with her unopened gifts. She didn't cry, but the look in her eyes was like she had already given up on me. Sarah was 14 when she landed a role in the school play. For weeks, she rehearsed tirelessly, sharing every detail with me, craving my pride. The night of the performance, I didn't show up. I had a deadline at work, and I told myself it was more important. When I came home that night, she was already in bed. The next day, she didn't say a word about the play. She just stopped trying. When she graduated high school, she stood on that stage, her eyes scanning the crowd. I knew she was looking for me, but I never showed up. I was stuck in traffic, and by the time I got there, the ceremony was over. She was standing by herself, her diploma in hand, her face empty of emotion. I tried to apologize, but she waved it away. "It's fine, Mom," she said, walking past me, but I knew it wasn't. When Sarah turned 15, she wrote a poem for me. I found it one evening, neatly placed on my nightstand. It was about a girl who loved her mother but felt invisible. I skimmed through it, barely reading the words. Childish, I thought. I never mentioned it. The next day, I found the poem torn up in the trash. I ignored it and pretended not to care. One night when she was 17, she cooked dinner for us. She set the table, candles light, waiting for me to come home. I arrived hours late, stressed and irritable. "Why didn't you wait?" she asked softly. "I have had a long day, Sarah. I'm not in the mood," I replied, dismissing her efforts. I saw the hate in her eyes, but I did nothing. She never cooked for me again. Not forgetting the last time Sarah tried to reach me. It was before she moved away for college, and also her goodbye. She stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, and looked at me. "I'm leaving now, Mom," she said, her voice soft, like she was hoping for something. I was rushing to a meeting. Distracted, I gave her a quick hug and a hasty "be careful." She lingered there for a moment, waiting for me to say more, but I didn't. She left without another word, and now she's gone. Every chance I had to be there for her, I threw it away. I never gave her what she needed, never saw the pain until it was too late. Her letter, those final words, are all I have left of her now. I regret having you as my mother. Her voice echoes in my mind, and I feel the weight of it crushing me. I failed her, not just once, but over and over again. And now I will never get a chance to make it right. What a shame. I couldn't fulfill my promise as a mother. It didn't just end there. It was memory upon memory. I began to think about the instant shock. I still remember the last time I saw Sarah alive. The house was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Usually she was up by now, moving about, her music playing softly from her room. But that day, it was different. I stood outside her door for a moment, my hand hovering over the handle. Something inside me told me to knock, to call her name, but I didn't. I hadn't checked on her in days, always too busy or too tired. I opened the door slowly. There she was, lying on her bed, so still. It sent a chill down my spine. Her face was pale and her eyes were closed as if she was sleeping, but there was something off, something that made my heart drop. The room smelled of something faintly sweet, something unfamiliar. The alarm bell started ringing in my head, but I didn't listen to them. Sarah, I whispered, my voice shaking, no response. I took a few steps closer, my stomach tightening with every step. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I kept moving until I was standing next to her bed. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they touched her cold hand. The chill shot through me, freezing my heart in place. Sarah, I called again, louder this time, but still no answer. My mind raced and panic began to set in. I shook her gently, hoping, praying for her to open her eyes, to tell me everything was okay. But she didn't. She didn't move at all. She was gone. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, my hands covering my face as the tears started to fall. My chest was heavy as I cried uncontrollably, the weight of the moment crashing over me like a wave I couldn't escape. That was when I saw it, the letter. It was sitting on the bedside table, neatly folded, with my name written on the front in her handwriting. My breath caught in my throat as I reached for it. My shaky hands hold the paper, tears streaming down. I unfolded it slowly, my hands shaking as I started to read.
Mom, by the time you find this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry for living this way, but I couldn't take the pain anymore. Not the pain you caused, but the pain of never being seen, never being enough for you.
These words hit me like punches to the gut. Every memory of pushing her aside, every time I ignored her cries for help, flooded my mind. I could see her sitting alone on her 10th birthday, waiting for a mother who never showed up. I could see her standing on the graduation stage, scanning the crowd for a face that wasn't there. And now she was lying here, lifeless because I had failed her one last time.
I know you loved me in your own way, but it was never the love I needed. I needed you to see me, to care, and now it is too late.
I screamed, a raw sound that raged from my throat, raw and full of regret. My heart shattered as I rocked back and forth, holding the letter tight against my chest, wishing I could take back every second of neglect, every missed opportunity to tell her how much she meant to me.
I loved you, Mom. I really did, but I wish I had a different mother.
The words burned into my soul, leaving scars I knew would never heal. My daughter had left this world believing she was unloved and unwanted because of me. And now I was left with nothing but the silence of an empty room and a heart full of regret that would haunt me for the rest of my life. My hands tremble as I hold the letter close, her words still burning in my chest. But there is more. I know there is more. Sarah's pain wasn't only about me. As much as she blames me, I can feel her guilt laced through the words. The way she seems to hate herself as much as she resents me. I forced myself to keep reading, even though every word feels like a wound that will never heal. The letter continues.
I know I've blamed you for a lot, but in many ways, I still do. But I need you to know something. I blame myself too. Who knows? I could have also been a good child, but I wasn't.
A brief catches in my throat. I never expected her to say this. I always thought it was all my fault, that I was the one who failed her. But now she's telling me there is something darker, something more than I ever realized.
You weren't there for me. I was lost. I was a kid and I didn't know where to turn. I needed you, but because you were gone, I looked for comfort in all the wrong places. I started hanging out with people who didn't care about me. They only cared about what I could give them. I made mistakes, big ones. I knew they were wrong. I tried to fill the emptiness you left with me. That only made it worse. We were all lost, searching for something, but none of us knew what it was. I was lonely and they became my friends because they understood. They didn't judge me. They didn't care if I was broken. And soon enough, I found myself in a world I didn't know how to escape.
My body feels like it's going up. I never knew this side of her life. I never saw it. I never asked. I was too wrapped up in my own world to notice her slipping into something dark and dangerous.
It wasn't too long before we started doing things I knew were wrong, but I didn't care. They were into hookups. Mom, it wasn't perfect. It was just survival. They told me it was easy money and I was desperate. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, even if it was in a world that was slowly destroying me.
I closed my eyes, my body trembling with the weight of her confession. My daughter, poor child, my sweet Sarah, was caught in a lie she didn't deserve, all because I wasn't there to give her the love she needed.
I thought it would be fine. I thought it was just temporary, that I could stop anytime. But I didn't stop. I got pulled in deeper, and soon it wasn't just about money. It was about losing myself, about doing things I hated just to numb the pain of feeling like I mattered. And then it happened.
I freeze, not wanting to know what comes next, but unable to stop myself from reading on. It happened. What really happened? A question I couldn't answer.
I got sick, Mom. You know what kind of sickness I mean. One day, I found out I had a disease, something you could get when you make bad choices like I did, a sexually transmitted disease. At first, I thought it wasn't real. I thought maybe I could fix it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I feared. But it was real, and it was too late.
Anger and sadness entwined in every sentence, a heartbreaking testament to her pain.
You left me alone, and in that emptiness, I lost myself. I lost everything, and the cost of that thief, the one that took away my life, my future. It was this disease. It stole everything from me, and it's killing me slowly. But it's not just the disease, Mom. It's the life I lived because you weren't there to stop me. You let me go, and now I'm paying the price.
I crumbled to the floor, the letter falling from my hands. My daughter is dead, and I'm the one who pushed her into that world. Even if I didn't know it at the time, she didn't just lose her way. She lost her life because of me, because I couldn't be the mother she needed. Her final words echo in my mind, haunting me like a ghost that will never leave.
I wish I could forgive you, Mom, but I can't. You let me down, and now I'm gone. Mom, I thought I could handle it. I thought I could manage the disease, but maybe it wouldn't get worse. But I was wrong. It's getting worse every day. My body is falling apart, and with it, so is my spirit.
My breath catches in my throat. I can feel the desperation in her ways, the hopelessness. She had been living with this disease, hiding it, suffering in silence, all because I wasn't there to help her when she needed me most.
At first, I kept telling myself it would be okay, that maybe I could get better, that maybe I could hide it from the world. But I can't, Mom. Every day it hurts more. Every day I feel weaker. I can't face the truth anymore. I can't live with this burden. And then there's the world outside, the looks, the whispers. I know what they will say. I know how people will treat me when they find out. The shame, the mockery, the judgment. I've seen it happen to others. They'll call me names. They'll look at me like I'm nothing. And maybe they are right. I couldn't bear to face that.
I can barely keep reading, but I force myself to, knowing that whatever comes next will be the hardest part. Her words tear at my soul. My daughter, my beautiful Sarah, was too afraid of the world's cruelty, too scared of the shame she thought she would have to carry, and I wasn't there to protect her from it.
So I made a decision. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. Knowing the disease is killing me bit by bit, knowing I'll never escape the judgment of the people around me. I'm not strong enough, Mom. I'm not like you. I took poison. By the time you read this, it'll have already taken effect. I wanted to end it all before things get worse. I couldn't live with the thought of everyone knowing and seeing the looks in their eyes. I decided to leave this world on my own terms before the disease did it for me. Besides, I had no one, so what was the big deal?
I feel my body shaking uncontrollably as I brace myself for what she is about to say. A scream of pure agony escapes my lips, and I fall to the floor, holding the letter tightly to my chest. She's gone. My baby, my Sarah is gone. And it was the pain of her disease and of society's cruel judgment that drove her to end her life. I'm sorry, Mom. She writes in the final lines.
I know this will hurt you, but I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't bear the weight of my mistakes or the disease that was slowly killing me. I hope you can understand one day, and maybe, just maybe, you can forgive me for living this way.
I collapsed onto her bed, shaken by uncontrollable tears, the letter still held tightly in my trembling hands. My daughter was suffering, not just physically, but emotionally, that she couldn't face the harshness of the world, a world I should have sheltered her, but I didn't. Sarah is gone, and I'm left with nothing but the knowledge that I could have saved her if only I had loved her more and had been there for her when she needed me most. But now, all that is left is the silence of the room, the emptiness where my daughter once was, and the pain of knowing she chose to leave this world because she couldn't face it anymore. As I sit on Sarah's bed, still holding the letter, memories from years ago flood my mind. I wasn't always this distant. There was a time when I thought I could give Sarah everything, that our life could be better, full of love, but things change. Life change. I mean, I'm not God. How could I have known about these changes? I had dreams too. Once, dreams of perfect family, of raising Sarah with her father by my side. But those dreams shattered the day he left. He promised forever, but forever was short. He walked out of the door, leaving me to pick up the pieces, and from that moment on, I had to be both mother, and father. I remember the early days. I tried to balance it all: work, the bills, keeping a roof over our heads. It wasn't easy. Every day was a fight to survive. And slowly, I started losing sight of the things that mattered. I was so focused on making sure we had enough that I forgot to be there for Sarah when she needed me. There were times I saw her trying to reach out, but I couldn't stop. I had to provide, I had to be strong, even when I was falling apart inside. Every time I looked at her, I saw the life I promised had slipped away, but I couldn't stop fixing it. I had to keep going for her, or so I thought. I didn't know what to do when her father left. There was no handbook on how to heal a broken home. I buried myself in work, thinking that was how I could save us. I became cold, distant, all because I thought was how I would survive. And in doing so, I lost her. And with that, the room's forced silence. There was no more later, no more Sarah, just the crushing weight of everything I didn't do and everything I could never fix. Right in front of me, I convinced myself that I was doing everything for her, that she would understand one day that all this hard work was for her future. But the truth is, I was running. I was running from the pain of a broken marriage, from the hate of being left alone to raising a child. I was running from the reality that I wasn't enough, that I couldn't be both mother and father, no matter how hard I tried. And in running, I left Sarah behind. She needed me, and I wasn't there. As I stare at the letter in my hands, it is clear now. Sarah blames me. And she's right. I became so wrapped up in survival that I forgot how to live with her. I forgot to love her the way she needed. And now she's gone because of it. I wiped the tears from my eyes and forced myself to read the rest of the letter. Mom, Sarah.
I know you were hurting. I know you were trying to make things work. But you forgot me all along the way. You stopped being there. Even when I needed you the most, you let life take you away and I was left alone.
Her words squeezed in my guts. I thought I was doing my best, but in her eyes, I abandoned her just like her father did.
After Dad left, I didn't know where to turn. I needed you, but you were too gone. Lost in your work, in your responsibilities, so I found comfort somewhere else, in people who didn't care about me, in choices that only hurt me more.
My heart shatters as I remember the nights I stayed late at work, the weekends I missed, all because I thought I was being strong for her. I never realized that in trying to be everything, I ended up being nothing.
I fell into the wrong crowd. I made mistakes. I followed people who led me down a path I couldn't escape from. The hookups, the bad decisions, they weren't because I didn't know better. It was because I was searching for something you couldn't give me. And when I got sick, I knew it was over. The disease was a result of the choices I made, the life I fell into. But it wasn't just the disease that killed me, Mom. It was loneliness. The feeling that I didn't matter to you anymore. You let me down, and I couldn't forgive you for that.
The weight of her words crushes me. I was so focused on keeping our lives afloat that I never saw her drowning right beside me.
And when the disease got worse, I couldn't take it. I couldn't face the world knowing what I would become. I couldn't deal with the stress, the whispers, the shame. So I took the poison. I decided to end it before the disease did. I wanted to be in control of my end, since I never felt in control of my life. I'm gone now, Mom, and maybe you hate me for this, but I hope you understand why I had to do it. I couldn't live with the pain anymore. I couldn't live with the feeling of being forgotten. by the one person who was supposed to love me the most.
Her final words ripped through me. My tears flow uncontrollably now. I had failed her in more ways than I could ever imagine. I collapsed onto the floor, my body shaking with sobs. She's gone, Sarah is gone, and it's all my fault. I thought I was doing everything for her, but in the end, I was only doing it to keep myself from feeling the pain of our broken home. I thought I could be both a mother and father, but all I did was to leave her behind. And now there is no going back. How I met her father was another story of its own. I met Daniel when I was young, full of hope, believing in it forever. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who knew how to make you feel like the only person in the world. I thought I had found my happily ever after. I thought love would be enough to keep us together. I remember the first time he looked at me with those deep brown eyes and how he smiled, promising me the world. I felt hard, not knowing that promises like that are so easily broken. We married quickly, and for a while things were good. He was there for me, and I thought he had always been there for us. I found out I was pregnant with Sarah. It felt like the final piece of our happiness had fallen into place. We talked about raising her together, about all the dreams we had for her future, but somewhere along the way, things began to change. It started slowly, little cracks in our perfect life that I ignored, hoping they would go away. Daniel became distant. He worked longer hours, spent more time away from home. I thought he was just stressed, trying to provide for us, the way a husband should. But there were whispers, late night arguments, and growing a distance between us that I couldn't bridge no matter how hard I tried. I remember asking him one night as we sat at the dinner table in silence, "Is everything okay?" He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes and said, "I'm just tired." But I knew it wasn't just tiredness. Something deeper was wrong, something I couldn't fix. I could feel him slipping away, but I didn't know how to hold on to him. Then, one day, he was gone, a story on its own. He left a note on the kitchen counter, just a word scrawled on a piece of paper. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." That was it. No explanation, no real goodbye. He walked out of our lives without looking back, leaving me alone to pick up the pieces of the life we had built. I was left with a newborn daughter, a broken heart, and no idea how to move forward. In the weeks that followed, I searched for answers, tried to understand why he left. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't enough for him. Maybe I pushed him away. But deep down, I knew the truth. Daniel wasn't the man I thought he was. He couldn't handle the weight of being a father and of being tied down. He wanted freedom, and we were the chains that held him back. He left me to raise Sarah alone, and from that moment on, my life became a balancing act. I had to be both mother and father. I had to work twice as hard to make ends meet, to keep a roof over our heads, to make sure Sarah had everything she needed. But in trying to do it all, I lost sight of the most important thing, being there for her. I thought I was doing the right thing by working hard, by trying to provide, but I was blind to what she really needed, my love, my attention. I couldn't see that. In my effort to fill the void Daniel left, I was creating a bigger void in Sarah's life. And now, reading her letter, I realized that the cracks that started with Daniel leaving never healed. They just grew wider until they swallowed everything, including my daughter.
I thought Dad would come back. I kept hoping he would walk through the door one day and fix everything, but he didn't. And when you left, you also left as he did. not physically but emotionally. You shut down, Mom. You stopped seeing me. I followed the wrong people because I didn't know where else to go. I looked for love in the wrong places because I wasn't getting it from you. I know that leaving you hurts you, but it hurts me too. And I needed you to be there for me, but you weren't. I made the choices I made because I felt like I didn't have a choice. I wanted to feel something, anything that would make me forget how lonely I was. When the days came, when it started taking everything from me, I couldn't bear the shame. I couldn't bear the thought of living in a world where I felt unwanted, unloved. So I made the same choice that made. I left.
She's right. I did shut down. I let the pain of Daniel's abandonment consumed me. I became so focused on survival, on keeping everything together, that I stopped seeing Sarah for who she was. A little girl who needed her mother's love, not just her efforts. Her words pierced through the memories like a knife. I was so lost in my own grief, my own struggles, that I didn't see how deeply Daniel's departure affected Sarah. She needed me to be strong for her, but all I could do was to be broken. I crumbled as I read her final confession. I dropped the letter, my body shaking with sobs. First, her father left, and now she's gone. And I'm the one left behind, drowning in the silence of all the things I could never say, all the ways I failed her. Sarah's death didn't happen overnight. It was a slow unraveling, starting from the moment her father walked out the door, and I was too blinded by my own pain to see the life slipping away right in front of me. There was a knock at the door, a knock, and it was so soft, almost hesitant, like someone unsure if they were even welcome. I wiped the tears from my eyes, thinking it was another neighbor coming to offer condolences or bring food I wouldn't eat. But when I opened the door, I froze. Standing there was Daniel, Sarah's father, the man who had walked out of our lives years ago without a word. He looked older, his hair now speckled with grey, his face lined with guilt and time. He stood there awkwardly, as if he didn't belong, and truthfully, he didn't. Not anymore. I heard about Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I came as soon as I could. The sight of him brought a fresh wave of anger and grief crushing over me. How dare he show up now, after all these years, after leaving me to pick up the pieces of our broken family? You don't get to do this, I snapped, my voice trembling. You don't get to walk in here like you care. You left us. You left her. Daniel winked, but he didn't back down. I know, but I need to see her. I need to say goodbye. His words stank. He hadn't earned the right to say goodbye. He hadn't been there when Sarah needed him. When I needed him, I stepped aside, letting in the air in the house was thick with grief, and he walked past me. I saw his eyes linger on the family photos lining the walls, photos of Sarah growing up, photos he wasn't in. We stood in silence for a moment before he finally turned to me, his eyes red and hollow. What happened? He asked, his voice cracking. The weight of that question made my chest tighten. How could I explain? How could I tell him about the years he missed, the nights I spent crying alone, the gradual unraveling of our daughter? But there was no way to avoid it now. She got lost, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She was just a child when you left. I tried, Daniel. I tried to be enough forever, but it wasn't enough. I walked over the table where Sarah's letter still lay. The words seared into my mind like scars that would never heal. She wrote me this before she died, I said, handing him the letter, blaming me for everything, but for not being there, for not loving her enough. Daniel took the letter, his hands shaking as he read it, his face twisted with a word. The reality of our daughter's pain crashing down on him. When he finished, he let the letter fall from his hands, his eyes wide with shock. She hated us, he whispered. No, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She hated me. She blamed me because I wasn't there. I was too busy trying to survive, to keep everything together after she left. And because of that, I missed everything. I missed the signs, the cries for help. Daniel looked down, his face a mixture of guilt and confusion. I didn't know, he whispered, almost to himself. I didn't think. You didn't think? I spat, the anger rising again. Of course you didn't. You left, Daniel. You left us. And I had to be both mother and father to her. I failed. We both did. He slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For a moment, we were just two broken people in a room filled with memories of the daughter we lost. I am sorry, he finally said, his voice barely audible. I thought living was the best thing. I thought you would both be better off without me. Better off? I laughed bitterly. She wasn't better off, Daniel. She was alone. She found herself with people who didn't care about her, who led her down a path I couldn't save her from. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes filled with pain. What do you mean? I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. She fell in with a group of girls, hookups, drinking, partying. She wanted to belong somewhere, and those girls gave her that, even if it was the worst thing for her. Daniel's face twisted in horror as I continued. They pulled her into that life, Daniel, and eventually she got sick, a sexually transmitted disease. It kept getting worse. She was too ashamed to tell me, and by the time she did, it was too late. The room went silent as the weight of what I had said sank in. Daniel looked like he was about to be sick. And when the disease got worse, I continued, my voice breaking. When she couldn't take the shame and the mocking from the people around her, she took poison. She ended it herself. Tears streamed down my face, and Daniel let out a shocked sob, his hand covering his mouth. I didn't know, he whispered again, his voice shaking. I didn't know it had gotten this bad. How could you know? I said, my voice bitter. You weren't here. You didn't see how she struggled, how she tried to reach out. And I was too busy being the strong one, pretending everything was okay, to notice that she was slipping away. Daniel stood up, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. I never should have left, he muttered. I never should have left you both. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle being a father, so I ran. The truth hung in the air between us. He had run, and I had stayed, but neither of us had been there for Sarah in the way she needed. We had both failed her. But then Daniel stopped pacing, turning to face me, his eyes filled with desperation. What can we do now? He asked, his voice broken. How can I make this right? I didn't have an answer. Could anything make this right? We stood there, two people who had lost everything, searching for a way to move forward. But in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about blame. It wasn't just about him leaving or me failing. It was about Sarah, about the love she had always needed but never truly received from either of us. I don't know, I whispered, tears falling freely now. But I do know this. We both lost her, and nothing we do now will bring her back. Daniel nodded, his face crumpling as the weight of those words hit him. And as we stood there, grieving the daughter we both failed, I knew that the only way forward was through the pain, through guilt, through the tears. We had lost Sarah, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to forgive ourselves and each other. The weight of the silence between us pressed down like an unbearable burden. Daniel sat back, his hands trembling, eyes distant as though he was trying to find a way to reverse time, to somehow fix what had already been broken beyond repair. But there was no fixing this. The pain, the shame, the disease had all spiraled too far, and Sarah was gone. Nothing could undo that, and no words could take away the heavy reality of what our choices, our failures had caused. I just can't believe she's really gone, Daniel said, his voice shaky. It feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. I wiped away another tear, though it felt like I had none left to shed. I told myself the same thing when I found her. Daniel, when I walked into her room that morning, thinking she overslept, I didn't know that her time had already run out. He looked up at me, the horror of what I was saying finally hitting him fully. You were there? I nodded. The memory was still too vivid, too painful. The day I found her was supposed to be like any other. I knocked on her door, waiting for her usual groggy reply to get up for the day. But the silence unnerved me. I knocked again. Then something inside told me to open the door. Something deep in my gut that I ignored for a second too long. When I opened the door, I saw her laying on her bed, her face pale, her body motionless. At first, I thought she was just asleep, but there was emptiness in the air, the kind you can't mistake once you have felt it. I rushed to her, shaking her gently, then harder, calling her name louder and louder, hoping no, begging for a response, but nothing except the stillness of her cold hand in mine. That's when I saw the empty bottle on the nightstand, the letter beside it, her final words to me, written with trembling hands, soaked with the tears she must have cried before she took that final, irreversible step. I didn't even read it at first. I couldn't. I collapsed beside her, screaming her name over and over as if sheer desperation could pull her back. But she was gone. Daniel's face had gone pale as I recounted that day, his hands covering his mouth as though he couldn't bear to hear it. You were there. You saw her. His voice trailed off, thick with disbelief. I should have been there too. I should never have left. None of that matters now, I said, my voice rough. We can't go back. We can't change anything. All we can do is live with the truth of what happened. Daniel nodded, though he still seemed lost. What did the letter say? What were her last words? I swallowed hard, the memory of the letter burning in my mind. She blamed me for not being there for her. She blamed me for not loving her enough. She said she felt abandoned. Daniel, first by you, and then by me. And when she was left to fend for herself, she fell in with the wrong people. Face contorted with pain. Who were they? These people who took her away from us. A group of girls, I said softly. They offered her what she thought was love, what she thought was belonging, but it was just emptiness, hookups, parties, a life where nothing mattered except escaping the pain, and it led her straight to that disease. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. What disease? She contracted an STD. I said there was falling heavily between us, and it got worse. She didn't tell me until it was too late. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel stood, pacing the room again, his hands running through his hair as he struggled to process it all. I wasn't there. I wasn't there to stop any of this. You weren't, I said quietly. Neither was I, not in the way she needed. We failed her, Daniel. We failed as parents. I thought leaving was the right thing. He mattered more to himself than to me. I thought I was doing what was best, but I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. For the first time since Sarah's death, I felt something besides anger toward him. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close to understanding. We had both made choices we regretted. We had both hurt Sarah in ways we never intended. Why did you leave? I asked suddenly, my voice softer than I expected. You never told me the real reason. Daniel stopped, pacing and turning to face me. His expression haunted. I was scared. I wasn't ready for a family. And then, when things between us started falling apart, I convinced myself that leaving would make things better for you, for Sarah, but it was just me running away. I was a coward. The truth of his words hung heavy in the air. He had been a coward, and I had been overwhelmed, caught between survival and motherhood, between the weight of the world and the daughter who needed more than I could give. I thought I could handle it. I said quietly, more to myself than to him. I thought I could be strong enough for both of us, but I was so wrong. We stood there, two people bound by the same grief, the same guilt, and the same overwhelmed sense of loss. Neither of us had been enough for Sarah. Neither of us had seen how much she was suffering. Not until it was too late. Do you think she forgave us? Daniel asked after a long pause. I don't know, I whispered, but I hope so. I hope she found some peace in the end, even if we didn't give it to her. The weight of those words settled between us, and for a moment, there was nothing left to say. No more blame, no more anger, just grief, just lost. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. We can't bring her back, but we can honor her. We can make sure that her life, her struggles weren't for nothing. I know that, though I didn't know how we would do that yet. But for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of something in the darkness. Maybe it was hope. Maybe was the possibility of healing. Whatever it was enough to take a step forward. Together, we would find a way to make sense of this tragedy. Together, we would find a way to remember Sarah, not just for how she died, but for who she was before the world took her from us. Time passed in a forge after Daniel came back. People came and went offering condolences, dropping off food, and speaking empty words that left us both unsatisfied. But every night, when the visitors left and the quiet settled in, I felt the weight of Sarah's absence even more. Daniel stayed, sleeping in the spare room, but we barely spoke. It was like we were both holding our breath, afraid that speaking too much would bring the pain back to the surface. But it never really left. As the final rays of sunlight filled the house, Daniel sat beside me at the kitchen table, looking very tired, but with a strong look in his eyes. We need to talk, he said quietly. I nodded, preparing myself. I have been thinking about Sarah, Daniel said. We couldn't save her, but we can help others so they don't suffer like she did. Daniel's determination surprised me. What do you suggest? I asked. Daniel and I talked about helping children like Sarah. I have been learning about her situation. Daniel said, sounding sad. She was sick, felt bad about herself, and was alone. Many children need help and have no one to talk to. We can start a group to support them. His words touched my heart. Doing something could ease our pain. It wouldn't bring Sarah back, but it would make her life meaningful. I don't know where to start, I said. If it helps one kid like Sarah, it is good, Daniel said, sounding sad. She was sick, felt bad about herself, and was alone. Many children need help and have no one to talk to. We can start a group to support them. His words touched my heart. Doing something could ease our pain. It wouldn't bring Sarah back, but it would make her life meaningful. I don't know where to start, I said. If it helps one kid like Sarah, it is good, Daniel said. Working together felt good. Maybe this was how we could forgive each other and ourselves. But we sat in silence for a while, both of us lost in our own thoughts. There was so much we had never said to each other, so much pain we had carried in silence. But sitting here in the wake of Sarah's death, those unspoken words felt like a bridge we needed to cross if we were ever going to heal. I don't know if we can ever fully forgive each other, I said after a long pause, but maybe by doing this, by helping others, we can at least start to forgive ourselves. Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. I hope so, he whispered, for Sarah and us. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt a small spark of hope. Not the kind of hope that erases the past, but the kind that allows you to live with it and move forward. Maybe this was how we would find our way through the darkness together, one small step at a time. The days that followed weren't easy. They were filled with painful reminders of the life Sarah could have had, the moments we missed, and the family we once were. But in the midst of that pain, we failed her, I said. We can't change the past, Daniel said, but we can help others. We can fight for girls who need support. We started Sarah's foundation to prevent other families from suffering like us. As we worked together, Daniel and I began healing. We talked about our past, our lost, and our new understanding. It wasn't easy, but we found hope. After Sarah passed away, Daniel and I went to her school. We shared her story to help others. We wanted the girls to know they weren't alone. We offered support, and then a 16-year-old girl came up to me. She looked sad, like Sarah. Thank you, she whispered. I thought no one cared. I smiled. You are not alone, we care. The girl smiled back. Sarah's story helped her. We helped many girls. Sarah's legacy lived on. Months later, as the foundation continued to grow, I returned to Sarah's grave. I knelt beside it, tracing the letters of her name with my fingers. The pain of losing her would never fully fade, but standing here, I felt a sense of peace. I hope you are watching, Sarah, I whispered, my voice carried away by the wind. I hope you see what we are doing in your name. I wish things had been different, but I promise you, we are making sure no one else feels as lost as you did. As I stood up and walked away, I knew that this was just the beginning. The work we were doing, the lives we were touching were all for Sarah. And while we could never bring her back, we could honor her by saving others. As the years passed, Daniel and I found a new rhythm in our lives. The pain of losing Sarah never truly left, but it softened over time, replaced by the knowledge that her memory was driving something meaningful. The foundation continued, helping girls and families avoid the same heartache we had endured. We were saving lives just as we had promised. But there was something else, a second chance we never saw coming. After years of grief, When I had almost given up on the possibility of ever being a mother again, we were blessed with a miracle. I still remember the day the doctor confirmed the news. Daniel and I stood in shock, unable to fully comprehend what this meant. We were going to have another child, a daughter. When our baby girl was born, it was as if the universe had given us a gift we never expected. She was beautiful, with the same soft curls and curious eyes that reminded me so much about Sarah. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope, as if Sarah had come back to us in a way we never could have imagined. We named her Sarah in honor of the daughter we had lost, but this time we were determined to get it right. This time we would be present. We would love her fiercely, cherish every moment, and make sure she knew how much she mattered. As we watched our little Sarah grow, I felt like life had given us a second chance, a chance to learn from the mistakes we had made with her sister. Every time I held her, every time she smiled up at me with those familiar eyes, I felt Sarah's spirit watching over us, guiding us toward a brighter future. Daniel and I promised each other that we would never forget the lessons we had learned. We would be the parents Sarah had always needed, giving our new daughter the love and attention we hadn't been able to give before. We would make sure that our hearts were open, and that no pain or regret would ever stand in the way of the love we had had for her. In naming her Sarah, we weren't just honoring the memory of the past, we were committing to a future filled with love, understanding, and the chance to correct the mistakes that once tore us apart. The room was warm and filled with soft laughter and quiet talking. I held baby Sarah close, feeling her tiny breath and the warmth of her little body. My husband stood next to me, and together we were able to speak. It was a happy day, but also a day to think about the past. As the priest finished his blessing, the room grew quiet. Everyone was looking at us. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice shaking a little at first, but getting stronger with each word. Today, we welcome Sarah into our lives, I said, holding our baby girl tighter. This is a happy day, but it is also a time to think about everything we have learned. We have been given another chance, and we promise to always be there for Sarah, to love her and to guide her in the ways she have always wanted. I looked at my husband, and he took my hand. His touch giving me strength, his spokenness, his voice calmed and steady. We learned from our loss that being a parent isn't just about providing. It is about being there in every way, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Today, we promise to be there for Sarah. Tears filled my eyes as I looked down at Sarah's little face. I knew I had to say more, to share what I had learned. I want to tell you something we learned the hard way, I said. Life can be so busy. We focus on work and everything else, and sometimes we forget what really matters, our children. We think we are doing enough, but what they really need is our love and attention. Don't wait until it is too late. Be there for your children. Listen to them. Let them know they are not alone. After we finished speaking, something changed in the room. The air felt lighter, almost like a soft breeze moved through, gently swaying the curtains. I felt it. Everyone did. I looked around the room, and saw our family and friends, I felt a warmth inside me, not just in my heart, but in the air around us. And in that moment, I understood. Our first daughter, Sarah, was finally at peace. She had been waiting for this, waiting for us to learn, to heal, and to make this promise. Her spirit, once full of pain, could now rest. Tears filled my eyes again, but this time they weren't from sadness, they were from relief and love. I could feel her. Sarah's spirit was free. I turned to my husband and he squeezed my hand. I smiled through my tears. Sarah is with us, I whispered, and she knows we have learned. She can rest now. The room was quiet for a moment, and then soft clapping filled the air. It wasn't just for us or baby Sarah. It was for the peace we had found, for Sarah's spirit finally being free. It was not just a day to celebrate new life. It was a day of healing, of love, and of moving forward.
Her tears fell like rain in the night.